So thank you for joining our webinar today on automating the worst parts of your legal life with myself here at Actionstep and with NetDocuments as well. So my name is Tyler Bannerman, and I'm a senior account executive here for Actionstep, covering Australia and New Zealand. So we have a great lineup of speakers today and over 80 attendees, so it should be a good session. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd just like to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So number one, please just make sure all of your mics are muted just to reduce noise on the line. I'd like to encourage you to post questions throughout the webinar using the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll be sure to look at those and answer some questions at the end of the webinar. You can also use our messaging system to flag any technical issues, and one of our Actionstep team members will be sure to look into it. And lastly, we are going to circulate the slides and a recording of this webinar to everyone afterwards, so you can listen back at your leisure and share it with colleagues rather than have to take notes during the actual webinar itself. So on to our speakers. So first, we are going to have Dan Hauck from NetDocuments. Dan is NetDocuments Chief Product Officer. So he is going to talk to us about automation trends in legal technology and how these have the potential to make lawyers' working lives much easier. The second is Janelle Watts, who is the Corporate Development Director for Hamilton Locke, and she will speak to us about Hamilton Locke and their experience using both Actionstep and NetDocuments with some great strategic and practical insights. So Hamilton Locke is an Australian firm with about 40+ lawyers in it using both of the solutions. And then lastly, just to tie it all together, I'll just talk you through how Actionstep and NetDocuments integrate quickly and just some of the efficiencies that you can gain. Hopefully that will illustrate some of the themes that we talk about throughout our session. So without further ado, I'll turn this on to Dan, and he can just go through some of his key points.
Great, thank you, Tyler. I'll go ahead and share my screen. My name is Dan Hauck. I'm the Chief Product Officer at NetDocuments, and I really appreciate everyone joining here. And I'm really looking forward to talking a little bit about something that I'm passionate about, which is, how to automate the worst parts of your legal life. So I was a lawyer. I practiced for about 8 years, and many of the things that I did, and in fact, one of the reasons that I got into technology was because I wanted to really solve some of these challenges. And at NetDocuments, I'm in the fortunate position to be able to build out solutions to help other lawyers start to solve some of those challenges, either through our platform or through integrating with some of our partners like Actionstep. So this is a really exciting opportunity to share some of those here. And I think it's worth talking about how and why this topic is really important because the workspace that we are in today has been very much disrupted. When we think about, well, why do we need to automate these things? Well, it's because the amount of data that we are generating is just so significant. It makes it hard to operate in that kind of super saturated data environment. 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. We have a huge increase in the number of people who are working remotely. And we have, depending on the size of your organization, you could have as many as 100 gigabytes flowing in and out of your organization. And again, depending on your IT department, they may or may not be in touch with some of the things that you're encountering and thinking about the challenges and so forth that you're trying to solve. And automation is a key part of solving it. It's a business strategy that enables new ways of working, enables agility, and also exploits new ways of doing work, right? And so if you think about the journey that we have been on as businesses, as law firms, thinking about how we've gone from this kind of server-based model with applications sitting on legacy platforms. Yes, they were important and they provided these kind of business critical solutions, but as we move into web-based solutions, these are the types of platforms that allow us to develop and deploy rapid innovation and to really generate kind of creative functionality that is properly coupled with security. And so that's the era that we are living in today. It's one of self-service, mobility, dynamic actions, and security sensitivity. And so at NetDocuments, those are the types of things that we're thinking about. And then the question is, how do we layer this concept of automation on top? If you think about that journey we've been on, once we were happy maybe to get 20 emails in a day, that was a fun day, a lot of activity. Now we're just looking for ways, looking for solutions to manage that email. We used to not leave our office because that's where the phone was. That's how people reached us. But today our phone is a work device, which means that where we have it, we can actually do work. And then, of course, the security policy was lock your door. Now we have, complex information governance, password hygiene, all sorts of different things, that we're thinking about. And this is the big one for the topic here today, is of course the idea that change occurred slowly with time, and you could adapt, right? You could modify your processes to deal with that. But now the kind of dynamic change that we are in really does require this kind of concept of automation. And so as we think about automation and why it matters, we think about kind of three main things here. One is automation is really what helps you work at scale. And so it allows you to take the things that you're doing today and kind of do that more broadly, more securely, more consistently. And that, of course, helps you deliver better results. And then with that, as you are going on this journey, oftentimes you're inventing new workflows. You're figuring out ways to deliver better results, to work at scale in ways that you hadn't thought possible before. And certainly, it's not just the same process, but it's a modified process, one that's injected with a certain intelligence and so forth. And in NetDocuments, we tried to think about where can we see that? Where do we see the biggest impact for technology to help work at scale? And one of those was around email filing, right? If you think about the importance of email filing, the importance of having a complete digital file as part of your client matter record, you need to have those emails associated with it. And of course, one of the challenges is that as the volume of email has gone up, you have to have a way to automate that filing. We introduced the concept or the application of ND Mail side of Outlook, and the idea there is that you can use technology, you can use search, you can use predictions to understand where an email needs to be filed. So you can surface those predictions to users. You can see all the different matters and then easily place the email within it. Use a global filing indicator. So it's a little green check mark inside of Outlook, but it's a very powerful check mark because ultimately what it does is it signals not just to you, but to everybody that this email has already been filed so that you can dispose of it. So instead of having 5 people in 5 different offices filing the same emails over and over again, you're essentially automating the work of one across all of those 5 people because they'll immediately see that it's already been filed. And of course, if you're in the folder mapping environment, if you like to work out of folders, you can do that as well using drag and drop to any location inside of NetDocuments. So when we think about building that complete file and the ways that we can apply technology to do that with email, ND Mail is one of those solutions. Another area that's really interesting, I think, is thinking about how do we automate these creation of document collections, right? How do we deal with these scenarios where we have to put together a series of documents? And in fact, when I think about my own practice, that's something I did quite a bit, was getting ready for going to court, getting ready for deposing a witness, getting ready for meeting with a client. And all of that involved creating groups and sets of documents, and those documents, as they exist inside the document management system, actually have deep and meaningful relationships that we want to somehow bring together so that it's sensible, it's clear, and that there's a reason, as we're looking at it, we understand why and how all of these different documents are connected. And so when we thought about how can we automate this process, we thought about how can we create a tool that allows us to use these kind of three key elements of headers, placeholders for when you have a document that's coming in, and then the documents themselves, so that as you are building out this binder, this kind of virtual binder, you can very easily organize it exactly to your specifications, put in exactly the headers and so forth that you want, and ultimately end up taking that completed set of relational documents and delivering it as a single digital asset for distribution. Now, of course, the real value here is that you can do this in the context of deal binders, HR and KM resources, onboarding resources, organized pleadings, which I mentioned earlier, and that last one, cloning for reuse, right? You can take that work that you've done and actually repeat it in another scenario. So for example, you need to make a slightly different version of a deal that you've done, you can do that. So I think that's a critical way to understand, how we can automate, these document collections. Understand that the work that we do inside a matter, it's not just one time. Oftentimes we are repeating these actions over the course of different matters, and a tool like Step Builder can help do that. And then of course, sometimes we're thinking about ways that we are partnering with different solutions together to make a holistic solution. That's really one of the key elements of this webinar, is to talk about how NetDocuments and Actionstep do that. Another interesting example that I thought folks here would be interested in, and one that I just found out about folks building on the NetDocuments platform, is using automation to access documents through your phone. So literally calling up a virtual agent and telling this virtual agent your matter number, and then having it text back to you the recent documents that are associated with this particular matter, and then being able to click on that and having it deliver you into the ND mobile experience. This is a technology from a company called Clobot. Really interesting way that shows how, if you have the right API endpoints, if you have the right platform to build on, you can now integrate really exciting solutions together. And we're going to see that here a little bit later. So we have a number of different solutions that we provide to try to create that uniquely valuable experience around workflow and productivity. Again, if you are interested, we'll come back to this, but would love to be able to connect with you. And Tyler, I will turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks for that, Dan. Well, with that, I am going to switch this over to Janelle now at Hamilton Locke. So I will turn it over to Janelle.
Thank you. I'm just making sure that I'm providing my right monitor. So hopefully everyone can hear me and see my screen. So Dan or Tyler, jump in and let me know if not.
Yeah, we can hear you well, and we can see your screen. Perfect.
Perfect. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janelle. I'm the Corporate Development Director at Hamilton Locke. I'm going to spend a little bit of time today telling you about Hamilton Locke, what we're trying to do a little bit differently, and how platforms like Actionstep and NetDocuments are helping us do that. My role is very varied. It's a mix of kind of operations, HR, compliance, IT, technology, reviewing expansion, acquisition opportunities, and implementing those. Before Hamilton Locke, I worked as an M&A lawyer. I've worked at both national firms and international firms, and also in a house at Telstra. So I feel like I've got a good grasp of different types of law firm environments and how different processes are implemented in those different environments. Hamilton Locke is a relatively new firm. We've been operating for about 18 months now. We started with 12 people, and now we have 2 offices in Sydney and Melbourne. We have 13 partners, soon to be 15. And the bio for the the webinar's a little bit out of date because we're kind of closer to 50 staff now. So we're growing really, really quickly. Of those 50 people, 45 people are lawyers and or paralegals. And this is a pretty kind of high ratio of, say, support staff to legal staff compared to a lot of other firms that I've experienced or been at. In my experience, you might have kind of one secretary to every 3 or 4 lawyers, and that's not even kind of including your, finance and HR and IT teams. So some of the reasons we're able to maintain such a kind of favourable ratio, we had a kind of clean slate in relation to the platforms and software that we use. So we've sought to build kind of scalable infrastructure which can do more without needing to add more people to kind of process things. We also outsource and offshore a number of back office services, including things like payroll, bookkeeping, accounting. We also kind of outsource graphic design, word processing, and paralegal services. And so even though we only have, say, 45 lawyers on the ground, we have the support of a much bigger organisation behind us. The other thing that we've aimed to do is automate and simplify as many processes as possible, using a mix of platforms, technology, and also offshore processing. So when I was working as a lawyer, so I had some kind of key frustrations. One was bureaucracy, so process and approvals for the sake of process and approval, sometimes it seemed like, without considering the context. So for example, at a previous firm, it could take kind of up to 4 weeks to kind of complete a conflict check. The people that were doing that conflict check weren't M&A lawyers. They didn't understand how the transaction and the parties fit together. So it was just, it was something that took much longer than it needed to. The other thing is conformity, so doing things a certain way because they've always been done that way. Kind of Dan touched on, kind of mobile phones and not being kind of chained to your desk because that's where your phone is. But a lot of the times clients are calling mobiles rather than your desk phone. So do you actually even need a desk phone at all? The other thing that I used to find really frustrating was fear. So fear of trying new things. At a previous firm, they refused to look at any cloud-based platforms or technologies. It was just a blanket. We can't use those types of platforms or technologies. And the last one was treating staff as resources and not people. So I suppose with Hamilton Locke, we're trying to take all those frustrations and say, well, we've got a clean sheet of paper, so how can we do these things differently? So over the last couple of years, the market's been flooded with a huge number of different legal tech solutions. And while reducing the time it takes to undertake diligence or draft a contract is no doubt super helpful, I think people often overlook the incredible power and value that comes from simplifying and improving everyday processes. And there's a number of things that people are doing every day or multiple times a day, and streamlining those can be really valuable for a number of reasons. If you're reducing the time that people are spending on admin tasks, it's increasing the time that they can spend on client matters. It also means that you don't need as many people to complete those tasks. And it also is reducing frustration. Most of the time, staff find administrative tasks really distracting and frustrating. So if you're reducing this kind of burden, you're kind of automatically increasing staff satisfaction. So I thought I'd just touch on some of the examples of things that we are in the process of implementing or have implemented or are trying out, and kind of using Actionstep and NetDocuments to help us do that. So one example is matter opening. So with Actionstep, it's really easy to open matters. And once a lawyer opens a matter in our environment, it kind of sets in process a number of different events. So once the matter has been opened, it sends an automatic email to our offshore provider telling them that matter's been opened. They update certain settings, billing settings in Actionstep. They produce the template engagement letter using the template that we have loaded into Actionstep. They send that to the lawyer for their approval. Once that's been approved, they send that to the client via DocuSign. Once that's been signed by the client via DocuSign, it's saved into the NetDocuments folder for that matter. They also complete the conflict check, send around a conflict check email to the partners, and then also save all those type of documents on the matter as well. So the only thing that the lawyer on the ground has to do is open that matter, and then all those other things are done kind of in the background automatically and saved where they need to be. In my experience at other firms, it's either kind of secretaries doing that or the lawyers are needing to kind of push that process forward, and it can take a long time and can be incredibly frustrating. I might just skip over invoicing for the moment, but so the other thing that we're looking at is not only how can we improve the client-facing processes, but also our internal processes. So we've recently moved all our kind of people onboarding into Actionstep. So there's kind of one source of truth, one place that we're collecting all that data. So when we have a people action type, when a new person is joining the firm, we create an action type for that person that automatically generates tasks which get allocated to kind of the IT team, the finance team, the HR team, and also kind of people on the ground to do various things. And then, you know, when people are completing those tasks, they can check them off and make sure that, you know, everything's been done. It also means that there's one place where we're capturing all our data, whereas before moving this onto Actionstep, I kind of was managing this using, you know, different spreadsheets and different folders. One of the other things that we've tried to simplify and automate is trust account management. So obviously using the trust accounting features in Actionstep, but at previous firms, a lot of this was done using paper forms and getting signatures. We've moved all that online, so we use forms to collect kind of receipting data and payment data, making sure that we're capturing all the kind of client approvals and partner approvals, and doing all that digitally rather than kind of using paper forms. So there's kind of just a small snapshot of some of the things that we're kind of using the Actionstep workflow processes to help us with. In terms of recommendations for kind of implementing this type of thing, we're always constantly kind of thinking, well, what else? What else can we be automating? What else can we be putting a process around? Even if it's a task which someone does a couple of times a week and it takes them 15 minutes, if you can change that so it's only taking a couple of minutes, it's hugely valuable. The other recommendation is make it simple. If lawyers can sometimes be difficult people to kind of change habits, and so what I found is you really need to make the process as simple as possible. There might be a lot going in the background, but what's kind of facing the user needs to be really easy to use. And the other thing is action, not motion. Sometimes I find that law firms are really worried about before they implement a process or they implement something new, they want it to do 100% of the job or do everything that they need it to do. Whereas in reality, if you're implementing a process that does 50% of the job or does nearly everything that you want to do, that's still a much better outcome than what you have been doing. So I would encourage people to not just plan to do things, but just start implementing. Try it out. And you can always go back and change the process if you need to. So in terms of kind of our plans, Broaden, we're constantly looking for other processes that we can simplify and automate and improve. We also have quite a number of different platforms that we're using in addition to Actionstep and NetDocuments. And so what we are looking to do is is to really utilize those and see how we can bring all those together so we're not double handling. So we're not only looking at kind of processes, but how can we kind of put all these processes together so we're not needing to get new platforms, but we're fully utilizing the existing platforms that we have. And the other thing is we're always iterating and improving. So we may implement a process, and we've done this a number of times and it hasn't quite worked. So we go back and you tweak it, or you update it, or you change it entirely. So we're constantly not just looking for the new processes, but looking at the existing processes, the automation and simplification that we've put in place, and always kind of questioning how we can make them better. So that's a bit of a snapshot. I will pass back over to Tyler to wrap up.
Great, thanks, Janelle. Well, I'll just bring my screen onto here. So what I just wanted to do, just to sort of wrap this up a little bit here, was just quickly show you, we've talked a lot about Actionstep, and we've talked a lot about NetDocuments. So you've seen some bits and pieces from Dan. You heard some different things from Janelle. So I just wanted to quickly bring it all together and just show you how that integration works and where it is. So a lot of people will be familiar with the matter space in Actionstep. So we've talked a lot about automation today. So automating things like emails, documents, tasks, and those sorts of things within the workflow here of Actionstep, and then also the strengths of things like the billing and the trust accounting. But where the integration really lies is in the documents area. So if we go to documents here in Actionstep, then when you have the two integrated, you will have NetDocuments here. And then all of those elements that we had just chatted about, so the workspace, the Actionstep ND mail, which you can see would come through to the email area here. This is where you have the workspace. So having the two integrated allows you to have the benefits of ND mail, the Word add-in as well for NetDocuments, and then the automation features, such as whenever you open a file in Actionstep, we will automatically create that workspace for you in NetDocuments as well. So to wrap up, I just thought I would see if there were any questions and also just quickly mention some upcoming events. So if there are any questions, I'm just going to check the questions area of GoToWebinar here. So if you do have any, please fill those in now. So we do have a question here from Chris Hill. So this one is directed towards NetDocuments. So Dan, I might have you touch on this a little bit as well, but the question is, how does the document section in Actionstep differ from the NetDocs functionality?
Sure. So effectively, the documents section in Actionstep, when you have that integration, essentially what it's doing is showing that iframe and bringing it in as and really what that's doing is kind of exposing the NetDocuments platform more broadly. And so there's a number of different pieces of functionality that you can do. NetDocuments, such as being able to handle version control, check in, check out of documents, and full text search, a number of different things. And so that's why I think it's a nice combination, because if you need, and most lawyers do need that kind of functionality, and then you pair it with the functionality from Actionstep around the specific items and flows that are there, I think it's a nice integration. I believe, and Tyler, you could speak more to it. There is some documents functionality inside of Actionstep, but as you were trying to do some more advanced things, sometimes NetDocuments is the right approach.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that a little bit as well. So Chris, in Actionstep, you obviously in the documents area, you can do things like set your folders, and you can set your folders, have that open up in Word, generate documents automatically from templates. and lock out documents as they're being worked on. But NetDocuments really takes that functionality and takes it to the next level. So that's things like Dan has already mentioned, like the version control, document numbering, being able to create sharing cabinets and sort of sharing pieces of sharing different documents with different parties, and even things as well like a compare function. So comparing multiple different versions of your Word document and having ND sort of scan the differences between the two. So another question that we have here, does Actionstep and NetDocuments work with Macs?
Do you want to take the first part on Actionstep?
Yeah, so with Actionstep, with it being a completely browser-based system, Actionstep is fully functional on Macs as well. So actually the computer that I'm currently using to currently show this, I am currently running a Mac. So Actionstep does work on Macs.
Great. And on the NetDocument side, it is browser-based, so we do obviously work on both Mac and PC. We have functionality to enable check-in, check-out on Mac as well. There is some deeper integration that we have through a solution called ND Office that works on Windows. However, we actually recently introduced for ND Mail a new solution using the O365 add-in so that you can actually do mail filing using ND Mail regardless of what platform you're on, whether it's Windows, Mac, or mobile, or even Outlook Web Access. Any of the Outlook applications that support the Outlook add-in, you can use for that. So a variety of different ways. We also have a syncing client that many of our Mac customers use, which is similar to other file syncing solutions. So lots of different. We have a lot of Mac users on NetDocuments today.
Great. And I think we'll do two more here. So one is a question saying we've talked about Word documents, but does NetDocuments work with Excel and other file types?
Yes, absolutely. So NetDocuments really supports almost any file type. Most of them are previewed or can be previewed in our solution, but certainly the ND Office solution that I mentioned previously works with all of the major productivity applications, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, and then really any other document type that you're interested in can be stored in NetDocuments and then opened with whatever the native application is.
Great, and I'm just cognizant of time, so I think we're going to wrap up with the cost of NetDocuments in addition to Actionstep.
Our sales representative, Jen Cathcart, is on I don't know if she's on the call or if we have her information here, and I would suggest that you reach out to Jen. She is the local sales representative for Australia.
Great. So what I'll do is I'll wrap up with some upcoming events. So NetDocuments and Actionstep has got some coming up, and then everyone, if you do have further questions about functionality of NetDocuments or costs or anything like that, I'm going to have Jen's email up on the final slide here. So just to wrap up, NetDocuments are running an event. So registration is open for their NetDocuments Elevate event next month in Sydney. So Dan and other key executives are going to be flying in from the US and the UK to share firsthand the product roadmap for NetDocuments and all things new and exciting with the product. So prospective and current clients are both welcome to attend this free event on the 21st of November in Sydney. So look out for an email following this webinar with registration details. And us here at Actionstep, we do have a bundle of billing related product releases, which are under the umbrella of Getting Paid Faster that are coming out soon. So we are going to be running additional webinars on this topic in the next few weeks. So thanks everyone for your time today. We'll be sure to send out some details as well on further information for people like Jen as well in the webinar. Thanks, everyone.